This interview is a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Oral History Program's Living Legends collection. There is no date for this interview. It was conducted by Mr. Frank Beneda with a Mr. Mac Testerman of Watonga, Oklahoma, in Blaine County. It is being re-recorded on September the 14th, 1984, for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program. It is being re-recorded by Judith Mitchner.
This is Frank Benedy, Hitchcock, Oklahoma, Blaine County, interviewing Mac Testerman of Watonga, Blaine County, Oklahoma. Mr. Testerman, where were you born?
Morrison, Oklahoma, Noble County.
Did your father homestead in Noble County?
He did.
He made the run?
He made the run.
Did he make it in a wagon or on a
Horseback.
horseback? Do you know what color the horse was?
Sure. Dark brown.
You wouldn't mind telling us kind of what he told you about the run, would you? What you remember?
Well, he told, I can remember from what he told us is what taken.
I'll get a little closer here.
They went to the line, to the south line of the opening of the strip, is where he started from. There was a bunch of them from Missouri and eastern Oklahoma that went together. I believe he said there was around 30 old-timers, that is what he called old-timers, because they all had their folks with them. And they was there close to a year before the opening. They was locating the place where they thought they wanted to run to, picking each place separate, you know, and they had some rivers or creeks, steep banks to cross, and they had to pick crossings. And the way they done it, they fixed crossings where for just horses. They wouldn't make a crossing for no wagon and nothing like that, because they wanted to pick their land and certain ones in that community to settle. And they dug up and down the bank, and then they would cut a tree and fall it over that so as the government men wouldn't be to see about it. They was soldiers keeping them out from a certain time all the time. And when the shot was fired, they had 4 or 5 fellas that wasn't old enough to run. They had, and if they saw anything, that they was all on horses, and if they saw anything that they didn't think ought to be, that is would hold any of them up, while they got them fellas that was singles that to interfere with these other fellas that they didn't want in there, see. And that's, they made the whole race that way. And he said that that is before the run, they would go in with wagons and they would take 3 or 4 fellas and let them out, and they would dig on the dugout somewhere. they had several dugouts made before the opening, but the soldiers never did find them. And that's a way at the first where they couldn't get across with wagons and stuff, why they all practically put their stuff in these dugouts and in case of bad weather or something, you see. And I guess there was several of them that lived together, because it was in September, and seemed like that was kind of, according to what the folks said, that was a rainy month. They had quite a time getting their other dugouts out of the timber, away dug, you know. That is after they would rest a while, that is, and then they would go back there and dig. I'll have to wait a little bit.
Let's see. Now, do you want to start where we left off on? Now, after your dad made this run, did he have his dugout made?
Him and 5 others dug their dugout, each one of them, that is, they would go and dig on, say, if there was one of them that thought that he ought to have some dug, why, they would all go and dig on his, and even sometimes they would even dig a dugout a day. And then they'd have to haul their logs. They used logs to cover it with, you know, and they'd cut their timber right there and everything and cover the dugout. And they had it all practically all ready when the run happened. They used to have trouble with the soldiers keeping them out of a certain line, from a certain line, you know, if you was in a wagon or anything, but you could go afoot. They didn't care. But you couldn't go in a wagon or buggy for so many days before the run. And they would get after them, and they would have, if they had a load of logs or something, a lot of times, then why they would throw a log off right where the only place that they could get, where there was a ravine or something, where they'd slide the log off, and that would hold the soldiers up until they could get away, get further, you know. Of course, they wouldn't have done nothing, only they just move them back further, make them longer to get there.
Now, your father, you say, was from Missouri?
He was born in Missouri. My mother was born in Texas.
How in the world did they ever meet each other in those days? Travel was so slow. And
my mother's father was a Civil War veteran. My dad's father was a Civil War veteran. And they was having some kind of a meeting or something in, let's see, close to Joplin, Missouri. And that's where the folks met. Whenever you went somewhere like that, any distance, you taking the whole family. And, you know, and that's the way my father met my mother. Is they didn't know each other in the army, the folks didn't, but they knew of somebody that knew somebody just like it is now, and that's the way they got acquainted.
How come your father decided to homestead in Oklahoma? Did he ever mention the reason?
Well, the only thing I ever heard is he had to have a place to live, they said, and that was the best place, best chance to get it.
And where were you born? You were born then in Morrison, and what year was that?
In 85.
In
95.
1890.
Yeah.
1895. And how many of you children were there?
8.
8 children.
7 boys and 1 girl.
And you were the next to the oldest?
No, I'm number 5 is what they call. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister older than I am, and then myself and a twin.
Now, where did you start the school at?
Morrison.
What type of school was that?
It was a frame building, just had seats. Some of them was just homemade benches, like, and they had a board nailed up across the head of you, and you could lay a book and writing paper there, and like that. That was my first school.
What do you remember that stands out in your memory of school? Anything funny or anything sad that you remember
Well,
from your school days? Or any of that time in your life? Any happenings like people getting shot or murdered or...
oh yes, they was deputy sheriff got shot there, and Armstrong and Mitchell was the fellows that killed him. They convicted him for it.
What was the incident over? Do you remember that?
I don't know just what it was, but I think it was Armstrong killed another fella, and they went to arrest him, and he killed deputy sheriff.
Go ahead, now start.
I can still remember the first home. Well, the home I was born in was a dugout with 1 room above it, and they was we were twins. They say I was born first. My brother was smaller, and after we got up so we could crawl around and everything, my mother had us upstairs in the room, and she happened to be down below working. That is where the cooking all went on and everything. And my brother fell through the stovepipe where they run the pipe for the winter time and stuff, and he fell through that and landed right on the table. Now, and my mother used to tell about that and laugh about it, said she didn't know how it happened that she didn't have stuff all on the table and him fall right down in it.
It didn't hurt him?
No, never hurt him. Growed up then, it was just day after day, just school. We had that little, finally it was a 4-room school, And that's where I got my education. All we had is the 11th grade, and my last teacher was named Winry. He was German, and he believed in what he said was it. He kept order. Of course, my other brothers, two of them married, well, three of them married before I did, and my sister married, and that left me to do the farming because my dad was in the legislature from the starting of statehood. He was in the Oklahoma legislature. And I had to do the farming then. We had a half a section, and this was in 1915, and that time everything, of course, was cheap, and I put in a wheat crop and was raising a few cows for myself, as taking care of my dad's cows. He had quite a bunch. So the wheat crop froze out that winter, or something happened to it, and I saw I wasn't going to have even enough money to pay what few debts I had. And I made up my mind that I was going to get me a job, do something. So I went to Pawnee, Oklahoma, and went to taking teacher's examination to try to be a teacher. And I got my certificate, and I was at Sunday school with my mother one day, and a member of a school board from Oak Grove School District there came there and talked to me one Sunday and wanted to hire me $35 a month to teach school. Well, I couldn't see as I could. That wouldn't help me a whole lot, I thought. Everything just didn't have nothing practically, you know. And I never did teach school. So, and things kept getting worse. So I went to try to get me a job. I went to Tulsa. And I run into a recruiting officer, Navy recruiting officer, at Muskogee. And he was friendly, and we got visiting. So I joined the Navy then.
This was in
1916 is when I joined the Navy for 4 years. And so I done mine. I done a little of it on a battleship, and then as soon as they got submarines, they was calling for volunteers. And a fellow named Sheriff was in the same submarine sub-school, that is crew, that I was in, and I had charge of the torpedoes. And I asked for a transfer from the battleship to submarine. And I think I was about 2 months getting it, and they sent me to New London, Connecticut, to go to school. And They sent me to submarine school, to torpedo school, and to Lewis machine gun school at Utica, New York.
And where were you when World War I broke out?
When World War I broke out, we was laying in Chesapeake Bay. I was on the old battleship, Louisiana, and of course we was all anxious. Anybody who had any gumption, he was anxious for more service, you know, more service. Well, whenever I got transferred, why, that was what I thought I wanted. And so that's where I done my rest of my time, my 4 years, on the USS 03. That was a submarine. I still got a picture of it.
Did that give you a funny feeling to be in the side of a ship like that? Or?
No, it didn't. It didn't. He just, of course, it was kind of funny. What was so funny to me, you kept your cockeyed mouth shut. Now, that's one thing. You was on the submarine, you didn't tell nothing.
And when your 4 years was up, were you?
I was in Boston, Massachusetts. We was laying there getting repairs. And that's when my time was up, and they sent me to Oklahoma City, where I enlisted. That's where they sent me to.
Where did you go in the submarine? Did they send you very far? Because that's a silly question, isn't it?
I made more trips out from the United States, from the East Coast, and down along towards Panama Canal, and plumb up where you can see the icebergs. Now they would send us, we were supposed to go with a convoy, but we wasn't supposed to be seen. The convoy wasn't supposed to, nobody, because we was another subs, you know, and like that. The longest trip they sent us on, it taken us just 30 days to go across. Now they go in 7 and 8. We had to dive, had to practice diving ever so often. And if we come up and we could see things that they couldn't see us, well, we would go down to a certain depth and leave our periscope up. We would run on batteries, but we would have to say nothing about it if we ever got anywhere. Never saw anything, you know. Of course, I've often thought of the time that we was in a fog. We was going across and we run out of the fog right into a convoy, and it was our own. The old Jewett was a destroyer, number 42. That was one that scared us up more than anything. It dropped 7 depth bombs at us. Of course, we had to go and move and then lay quiet. And that was long about 10, 11 o'clock in the forenoon, and we laid there until dark. Now, we'd come up and peek a little bit, but...
And when you were discharged at from Oklahoma City, what did you do then? What was your next job?
I went to the oil field. My dad was in the oil business at Burkmanette, Texas. You've probably heard there's sometime or another what they call the Red River lawsuit. Burkmanette, him and a few friends got enough money together, and they drilled a well, and they got a good one, I guess.
What do you remember about working in the oil field?
Oh,
Besides hard work.
I like the oil field work, only I was just kind of wasn't steady, you know. Used to be up in the derrick and the windstorm come up. They was all made of wood then, you know. And them old things, you'd see them sway. Man, they were guyed with wire, but they'd scare you.
And how long did you work in the oil field then?
Oh, I had 3 years.
That would bring you up to about 1923, wouldn't it?
That's right.
And what did you do then?
I went to work at the Boardman Company, building bridges. I believe I helped to build about every bridge was on this Red River in this county.
You mean in the Canadian River?
Yes. And I helped to build 2 of them across this river at Woodward.
Now this bridge west of Watonga, it was the first bridge built in 1923?
No, there was another that was built before it, and it was washed out. Shorty Hillenbrandt down here worked on it. And they tore it out down here when they put this new one in, you know.
They put it in about the same place, huh?
It's right close to the same place, yeah. Only, of course, they have straightened the road some. It used to be you would go downstream when you crossed the river. You'd go downstream a little bit and cross it.
Was the bridge set on piling?
No, we sunk tubes, metal tubes.
Then pumped the sand out, huh?
Yeah.
How far is that to Solid? Do you remember? I often wondered how far it was to Red Bed there.
Oh, Red Bed is 20. I believe it's 26 feet. I ain't for sure.
I guess it drops there just the same as it goes uphill.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I had no idea it was that deep, too.
Well, there will be, now, in the bridge work, they will be, you sink a tube, you sink one tube right here, and 20 feet over for the other side, you might be 3 or 4 feet deeper. To red rock shale or something solid there, you know. It could be, now that's just the way it works.
After you quit Boardman and Company, what did you do?
I came to Watonga. Huh?
And found me.
Yeah. Of course, I found her while I was on this bridge here. And that's what kept me here. That is, we followed the bridging for close to 2 years after.
This interview was interrupted before it was completed on the master tape. This copy has been recorded precisely and exactly the way it appears from the master tape in the Living Legends collection.